Welcome to the WanderLearn-Podcast. I'm your host, Tapon. This is episode 3 of 4 with Rafina Garay. In this episode, we talk about hunting, one of my most controversial topics that I talk about on this podcast. If you haven't heard the interview that I had with Brittany Longoria and some of the follow-on episodes regarding hunting, you just use your podcast app to search for my name and hunting or WanderLearn and hunting, and you'll find a bunch of podcasts about that subject. They are my most downloaded episodes for whatever reason. I guess because they're controversial. And finally, we end with the question about whether in the 22nd century, statues of meat eaters will be removed from the face of the earth. I hope you like this podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter at WanderLearn.com, become a patron at patreon.com/ftapon, and leave me a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again, and enjoy this episode with Rafina Garay. There's a podcast where I interview, it's actually my most popular and most downloaded episode. It's one where I interview Brittany Longoria. So you just search for Brittany Longoria or Leopard hunter, and you'll find that episode. And to briefly summarize, this is a woman who killed a leopard, hunted a leopard in Namibia. She legally paid $45,000 or so to hunt and kill this leopard. And she got her photo effectively stolen from her where she's holding up the leopard. And she got a lot of flack because that photo of her holding up the leopard on social media, and a lot of people went after her and just utterly insulted her in every possible way that you can imagine. And I interviewed her, and I highly encourage anybody who's listening to this podcast to listen to that podcast. And then later on, Rejoice and I debated it in a separate podcast after that. But here's my question. You got a chance to listen to that podcast. What is your take on hunting?
I think there's so much merit in what Brittany says about wanting to tell her story of her experience as a huntress. I do think it is sort of a male-dominated activity in our country and maybe defies like expectations about gender roles and stereotypes. So I think she's got an important story to tell. And for that, like, I have a lot of respect. I grew up in a household where my father was both a hunter and a fisherman. And I think he hoped that his children would follow in his footsteps. And we all kind of became fisher people. But hunting was sort of this thing that I couldn't wrap my brain or my heart or my spirit around, I guess. There is a need to... what I love about, okay, so let me rewind. What I love about people who hunt with respect for the animals that they hunt is that they're doing the dirty work that we don't do on a daily basis if we're eating meat and purchasing it from a grocery store. Right. So on that level, I think hunting is more sort of a genuine connection to the loss of life that happens for our benefit. And my own father was really in tune with nature, really loved animals and birds. And his relationship to hunting came out of his experience in a third world country, having to hunt for food for, sustaining a family, his siblings and parents. But even he drew the line in certain places. Like growing up, one of the stories in our household was of his experience hunting monkeys, because monkeys can be a delicacy. I think people eat the brains of monkeys as well for protein, right? And my father's own experience with hunting monkeys was shooting this larger monkey in the forest for food for a troop of hunters, and then coming upon like why this monkey was holding on so tightly to this branch. And when they got closer to it, they realized the monkey was holding a baby monkey, and both had perished in the shooting. And my father never hunted monkeys again. And it was because he realized how human that animal really is. And I think there are moments of recognition when we can see our connection to animals. And I guess this is one of the reasons why I say I will be vegan at some point. But in the meantime, I try to eat meat with a certain level of reverence that I think hunters who really understand what the hunt is about, and hunters who use the food to eat as opposed to game sport, that there's a big distinction for me in that. And, I guess if you're talking about the morality of hunting, you have to also question the morality of mass producing beef in ways that are inconsistent with the natural laws of nature, right? My most recent podcast is about regenerative farming with Will Harris of White Oak Pastures. And he really kind of helps people walk through how they can farm sustainably and how they can kind of treat the animals with a certain level of respect for their needs to avoid the general stresses that come with what we have currently in large scale beef industry. So I do care about people having an understanding of all the different ways in which we relate to our food. So I think it's important for her to keep talking about her story and for people to think critically about whether they agree or disagree with what she's doing. I do think, like your comment about ego and how much ego is wrapped up in these trophy poses, right? I think there's something to be said about that. Glorifying the kill, to me, is not something that I'm necessarily in favor of. I think to honor the animal would be to take the time to eat the food with a level of reverence and appreciation for the sacrifice made. So I feel that way about it, but I'm not in a place to judge anybody else who needs a certain level of, or has a certain level of attachment to the notches in the belt, I guess, about which thing they've killed most recently. And I'm not so sure. I haven't followed her on Instagram, so I don't really know if there is anything like that for her. So I can't really comment too far about that.
Yeah, she has changed her Instagram images in accordance to some of the feedback she's gotten and has decided to take a kind of a reverence in her photos to kind of show respect to the animal and that kind of stuff. There's one minor disagreement I would have with you when you said either the difference between hunters who hunt for meat versus those who hunt for trophies. There's not to my knowledge, I'm sure they exist, but in general, it's exceedingly rare that a hunter will kill an animal and not have the meat consumed. In other words, just to discard the meat 100%. They personally might not eat the meat, in some cases, but they will usually donate it to the local villagers or whoever lives nearby. So the meat, whether it's a giraffe, a hippopotamus, an elephant, a tiger, a lion, all that meat, even though you and I may not eat it and you won't buy it at a grocery store, it's, according to lots of people, buffalo meat tastes great. And this is, so this notion that I think a lot of amateurs have, or just people who don't know hunting very well, they think that we just kill meat and just let it sit there and die, or just grab the head and stick the trophy on our wall and that's it. So there's that. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. I heard that in that podcast. And I'd say that I think that for me, in my mind, part of the thing that concerns me still is that there are poachers out there who consider themselves hunters.
Oh, right.
And some of them are definitely wasting the meat, even in the Pacific Northwest.
Right. Absolutely right.
We see people taking like the seal skins and leaving the flesh.
Absolutely.
And seal
and they'll
used
do
to
that
be,
with elephants and their tusks.
Yeah.
They'll just kill the elephant and just take the tusks and leave the elephant body to rot.
Yeah.
If you want to be as, again, trying to defend hunters. That's the funny thing is here I'm a vegan. I'm defending hunters all the time. But trying to defend them is in the sense that it's, again, not as if the food is going to waste. In other words, there's a ton of scavengers who come in and devour the elephant. Yeah. And you're feeding the vultures, the hyenas, the whoever else, then the microbes and the other rodents that come and devour whatever there. So nothing is getting wasted in nature in that sense.
Right. Yeah.
But human beings are not eating that meat for sure. That's certain. But here's the thing is I think that, well, let me ask you first this. What do you think about, there's many different terms for it, lab-grown meat or clean meat or that kind of stuff. What is your take on that phenomenon? For those who don't know, they're kind of using animal biology and basically reproducing it into a lab so that you can have a hamburger without ever having to actually grow a cow in order to make the hamburger. Yeah. So it tastes identical to a hamburger. Right now, they're very expensive. A hamburger that's lab grown costs over $1,000, so it's prohibitively expensive. But they're working on technology to bring that down. And do you bristle at the idea of having lab grown meat on your plate?
Yeah, I do. I do bristle at it. I would, I guess part of it is I spent time as a corporate biotech attorney, learning about different technology and, sometimes the unintended consequences of things, particularly in the area of science. And, I probably the people I used to work with would really think that I've gone off the deep end. But why try to make something as good as nature can make it? Right. Why are we following that purpose exactly, except that we think we need to have a hamburger, right? If you're interested in, I think you could just be vegan if you're worried about animal treatment, right? Like you just make a different kind of commitment as opposed to focusing on this purpose of making a sort of a humane, cruelty-free meat product. Because at the end of the day, the natural design of food gives it the nutrients, because those animals have innate intelligence in terms of what to eat. So if we were not to talk about meat, or we were to talk about salmon, I have a podcast where Jessica Plum, who is the producer of Return of the River, talks about salmon forests and how things are shifting in the salmon population with their size and things like that because it's being overfished. And that salmon, swims upstream and the bears eat it, and then they disperse the salmon carcasses because they used to just take the bellies when they were very large and eat them. And then you can look at the makeup of the forest and find the compounds that are directly from salmon in the trees. And to me, that's a remarkable thing, that there's sort of a natural cycle of nutrition happening in our ecosystems that, until I had that conversation with Jessica, I did not even know about. And to think that we have almost that, universal, intelligence to try and encapsulate it in a synthesized product, I think we can always kind of approach that. It's like having a parabola, right? You can approach it, but you're never going to quite get it exactly right. And so I would say that you might get something you can eat calorically. You might get something that will have some nutritional value, but will it be as good for you as the natural product? I think not. I don't know what the cascade of response in the body will be. Because like even at a genetic level, right, we have the same amino acids we share in common, right? Like the building blocks of our muscle come from these proteins that we're ingesting. So when you tell me you're giving me a synthesized product, what I know is that my body may not know what to do with that because it's not naturally found, right? Like we were hunters and gatherers first. So I guess that would be my take on it. It's maybe conservative, but I guess that's the intuitive part of preferring to move towards the simplicity of things, right? To go and forage the berries out of the forest if I can, as opposed to moving towards synthesized foods, processed foods.
There's been some books written about the chemistry of cooking. I'm sure you've read some of them, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite is Harold McGee's on cooking.
Okay, I haven't read any. I just know that this is a thing. There's a science to cooking. Yeah. I mean, literally down to the chemistry level. And they talk about temperature and cells and everything. I mean, just like it's amazing the level of detail that they go into. But my point is that ultimately a piece of meat or fruit or whatever is a collection of atoms. And it's a scaffold put together that create a cell. And that cell's put together in a certain way in a combination of proteins and fat and carbohydrates that all conglomerate into making whatever food that we ingest. So ultimately, the building blocks are, these cells and atoms. So my question is if we are able to just reproduce it, we have, let's say, nanotechnology that we can block by block and reproduce block by block, whether it be a banana or whether it be a piece of cow or pork, why would that be any different or bad for you, any worse or any different in any kind of way than eating a quote unquote natural banana or pig? I'd like to take a minute to tell you about another podcast I think you'll enjoy. If I've learned anything about you, it's that you want real talk about the world around you. That's why I think you'll like the podcast Out Travel the System, brought to you by Expedia. It's taking a transparent look at what it's like to travel these days, whether it's through stories from people who have continued cautiously traveling through the pandemic, or by staying tuned to the very latest news from the industry. Out Travel the System is backed by a solid foundation of data from Expedia, which means it can guide listeners through the best ways to maximize their travel budgets. The podcast is providing inspiration by talking to people who have made travel a central part of their lives, from professional travel bloggers to travel journalists and beyond. This season features U.S. destinations like Chicago, Boston, and New York, as well as international locations like Spain and France. The episodes will guide you through when to go, where to stay, what to do, and everything else you need to know. Look for Out Travel the System on your favorite podcast platform and like and subscribe now.
I think it reminds me of how people endeavor to clone the sheep. Was it Dolly? I can't remember
Dolly.
the name of the sheep.
Yeah, it was Dolly.
And that cloning process resulted in, a live animal that had weakness, right? It didn't have a level of integrity in it. And I think that's one of those things where, I guess in some ways it's like talking about inductive versus deductive reasoning, like building the blocks together and trying to make them fit is different than having something come out whole, right, in the birthing process and innately having the coding. Like I kind of think of our genetics as like the computer coding for the supercomputer of our brains and our bodies. And that's sort of a natural intelligence within each of our bodies, right? Like,
but your son didn't come out whole. I mean, in other words, he was a building blocks. It was a sperm and an egg that got together and started building and building and building, and all of a sudden, given 9 months, and he's still changing every single day. He's shedding.
Yeah, he's evolving.
He's evolving every single day. You and I are. We have a new liver every 9 months or whatever it is. So,
right.
Why can't we just reproduce that code, if you will? Why can't we just? What's wrong with that? I think we
can.
Okay.
So for me, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. To each his own, or her own, right, or their own. But I don't want to eat it, right? Because I'm somewhat suspect, right? If I know that processed foods over time historically have not been so beneficial for the body, that the body hasn't known what to do with certain things, like even if we just take the example of hydrogenated fats, the body just doesn't know how to cope with certain things or eliminate certain things from the body as easily. And so until I'm convinced that this is exactly the same thing, right? Which I don't think it can be. I think it's the parabola situation. So
you would, is there any evidence that can make you convinced that it is the same thing? What would you have to learn for you to say, give me one of those artificial lab-grown, clean meat, whatever, burgers, and I'll have one?
You'd have to be able to produce the steer from the lab for me to believe it. And the steer would have to have the integrity, not a dolly. Because look, if we think about the body, right, like every cell has like mitochondria that is functioning to create, that's the powerhouse of the cell. And those things, amass in the structure of the body to create our motion, to create like all the things that happen in the body.
Okay.
And the food on the plate, when it comes from the lab, doesn't have that architecture behind it, right?
Okay, so hold on. Another thought experiment then, Rufina. Your son, somehow his liver completely fails, utterly fails, and he's going to die in, I don't know, a month. So you have an opportunity.
This is a horrible question, Francis.
I'm a master at horrible questions. This is my job.
It's a horrible question. I should refuse to answer it.
Did you ask, Did you hear what I asked?
Pick a different person.
Do you remember I asked Brittany Longoria, I asked her, what if I could, like we could kill your father? Remember I asked her that question?
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm the master.
Do you remember when I said, Francis, do you remember when I said no spikes? I just want to name this moment as a spike, Francis. It's a spike. It's a spike.
Okay. All right. So imagine that I'm dying and I've got a missing liver.
Okay.
And,
I would definitely work at finding you a liver.
Okay. And then there's a place, and let's say there's no natural livers available, but there's a technology for only $5,000. You can buy a lab-grown liver.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, in that case, why not?
Okay, so
in that case, why not?
And
because it's a one-time shot, and it's a better answer than the alternative options. And without it, you could not sustain life. So in that case, yes. But when you're talking about the kind of prolonged ingestion of a food product that may or may not be providing you with the nutrients you're expecting, right? Because people are giving equivalencies to these things that, this lab-grown meat has the equivalency of anything sort of sourced naturally from the steer, right? I think that's where we come off being duped, because I would like to see more research done, right? In terms of what happens to people who are anemic, who are consuming like natural steaks with the B12s, totally bioavailable from that, versus anemics who are eating the laboratory meat. Like, can they get the same nutrition over time? Like, what's really happening in the body? Is it the same thing? Is it really equivalent? And if you put it out into the market and you say, well, it's good, but it's not really equivalent, and these are the things you might be missing, then I'm okay with it, because then it's, buyer beware. You're responsible for your own body and your own health.
Can I ask you a seemingly non sequitur question?
Sure.
So did your husband, when he proposed to you, did he give you a diamond ring?
Oh, so no, because we decided we didn't want to be married. We're partners.
Oh, okay. Shh.
Well, yeah, we were both divorced.
Okay.
And happily divorced.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess you could consider it more conscious. We're conscious objectors.
Okay, fine. Okay, that's fine.
And no, I have diamonds. Like, I think I probably have my old engagement ring from my previous wedding.
Okay.
And I don't want them anymore.
No, but what I was going to say is that I've asked this question sometimes to women, that if their fiance gave them a diamond ring, a zirconian diamond ring, would they be offended? In other words, would you rather have, let's say, an extra $10,000 in the bank and a cubic zirconian, which is, for all intents and purposes, is identical to the diamond that you would have gotten that cost $10,000, or would you rather have, the diamond itself and be $10,000 poorer? Yeah.
So I'm the wrong person to ask that question of, Francis, because
so.
I've never been a girly girl. That's why I was playing volleyball with the men's team. Right. And then I guess the second thing, like I stopped wearing jewelry.
Yeah.
I wear it occasionally, and then I saw blood diamond.
Oh, right.
Right. Have you seen blood diamond?
Yes, I have.
So like once you see blood diamond, you're like, why would I be supporting the De Beers? And why would I invest in this when there's a lot of like really inherent problematic things around the whole industry?
Right. Okay.
So
that's
where I sit on that. I'm the wrong person.
Okay. Yeah.
I would take the zirconian. I'd say, you can keep your zirconian. Let's just get married.
Okay.
I don't need anything.
In fact, I don't even need the marriage either.
Yeah, I don't even need the marriage. Throw it out the window. I commit to you every day,
Let's go back to your questions. You have more questions.
Okay. Yeah, I do have more questions.
And that concludes this episode of the WanderLearn-Podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we talked about, or if you'd like to comment on the show, or if you'd like to ask me a question, then go to WanderLearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is the username I use on all social media. You can also get to my website by going to ftapon.com. And here's one last reason to remember Tapon. If you like what I do and would like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. And now for 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it somewhere. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at WanderLearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.